The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound that would echo through an entire police department for months to come. 3 squad cars, 6 officers, cell phones raised, recording. A man in a $1,500 suit standing on the side of the road in restraints, his briefcase on the hood of his sedan, his dignity tested but unbroken. The whispers started immediately. Who is this guy? Why did Peterson call for backup? What did he do? They were asking the right questions. But every single answer they guessed was wrong. Because in about 15 minutes, when Captain Rita Holloway arrived and saw who they'd handcuffed, the silence would be deafening. They had no idea they'd just restrained their new boss. If you've ever been judged before anyone knew your story, drop a comment below. Because this one, it'll hit different. Let's go back 30 minutes. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in Riverton, the kind of morning where nothing ever happens. Officer Dale Peterson had been on patrol for 3 hours, and the most excitement he'd seen was a fender bender at 5th and Main that sorted itself out before he even got there. Then he spotted the silver sedan. Broken taillight. Simple enough. He flipped on his lights and pulled it over near the warehouse district, a part of town that had seen better days. The driver stepped out before Peterson even approached, a tall black man in an immaculate charcoal suit, holding his license and registration like he'd been expecting this. Too calm, too prepared. In Peterson's 12 years on the force, he'd learned to trust his gut, and his gut was telling him something was off. "Morning, officer," the man said, his voice steady, professional. "I apologize for the taillight. I'm running late for an extremely important meeting, so if we could handle this quickly, I'd appreciate it." Peterson took the documents, glanced at them briefly. Darius Bell, clean record, address on the north side, the nice part of town. So what was someone in a suit like that doing in this neighborhood at this hour? Important meeting, huh? Peterson's eyes narrowed. "Mind telling me what kind of meeting?" "A work meeting," Darius replied, checking his watch. "I'm expected at 2 o'clock, and traffic is going to be—" "Step out of the vehicle, sir." Darius paused. "Officer, is that really necessary for a taillight?" That hesitation, that slight questioning of authority, sealed it for Peterson. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch! I need backup at 4th and Industrial. Possible situation developing." It was a decision that would change everything. 2 squad cars arrived within 4 minutes, lights painting the street in alternating blue and red. Now 3 officers surrounded one man, and the energy shifted from routine traffic stop to something that felt like a takedown. Darius stood beside his sedan, hands visible, posture non-threatening, but his jaw was tight. "Officers, if you would just check my credentials, I can explain why I'm here." "We'll get to that," Peterson said, eyes scanning the car's interior. "First, I need you to answer some questions. What's your business in this area?" "I told you, a work meeting." "That's pretty vague." "It's also the truth." Darius's voice remained level, but there was an edge creeping in, not anger, just the exhaustion of someone who'd had this conversation too many times before. "My identification is valid. My registration is current. I've committed no crime beyond a broken taillight that I didn't know was out. So I'm asking respectfully, what is this really about?" The other officers exchanged glances. One of them, a rookie named Simmons, pulled out his phone, not to check something, to record. Within seconds, another officer did the same. Darius noticed. Of course he noticed. "You're filming this?" "Standard procedure," Peterson said, though it wasn't really. "Now, sir, I'm going to need you to open your briefcase. It's locked, and it contains confidential work materials. You don't have probable cause to—" "Sir, I'm not going to ask again." Darius took a slow breath, then reached toward his briefcase to retrieve the key from his jacket pocket. It was a simple movement. Controlled. Clear. But 3 officers saw a man reaching toward something they couldn't see, and 12 years of training and tension took over. Hands! Hands where we can see them. Before Darius could explain, before he could comply, his arms were wrenched behind his back and steel cuffs locked around his wrists. "Please," Darius said, voice strained but steady. "Please just check who I am." Nobody checked. Hit like if you're already seeing where this is going, because it gets worse before it gets better. Captain Rita Holloway was finishing paperwork when the radio call came through. Multiple units at 4th and Industrial. Traffic stop, suspect in custody. She barely looked up. Peterson could handle it. But something nagged at her. She glanced at her computer screen, at the calendar notification she'd been dismissing all morning. New chief arrives today, 2 p.m., Darius Bell, transferring from Metro PD. 4th and Industrial, that was near headquarters. 2 o'clock, that was now. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed her keys and ran, leaving her coffee spilling across reports she'd spent an hour drafting. Her patrol car peeled out of the parking lot fast enough to leave rubber on the pavement. She radioed ahead. Peterson, status on your stop? Subject is secured. Captain. Waiting on. What does he look like? Confused pause. Male, black, 6'2", 40s, wearing a suit. Holloway didn't hear the rest. She was already running red lights. When she arrived, the scene was worse than she'd imagined. 6 officers now, some in uniform, some in plain clothes, who wandered over from the precinct to see what the commotion was about. Phones out. A man in handcuffs standing beside a sedan, his expression unreadable, but his posture radiating controlled fury. She recognized him instantly from the photo in the announcement email. Same sharp jawline, same steady gaze. Same man who was supposed to be walking into the chief's office right now, not standing on the side of the road in restraints. Release him, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Now. Peterson turned confused. Captain, we were just... I said now. Holloway's hand was shaking as she held up her phone, the department announcement glowing on the screen. Do you have any idea who this is? The crowd went silent as recognition spread like ice water through their veins. Officer Simmons dropped his phone. The recording stopped, but the damage was already recorded, already saved, already irreversible. Peterson stared at the image on Holloway's phone, then at the man in handcuffs, then back at the phone, as if looking enough times would change what he was seeing. It didn't. Darius Bell, Chief of Police. Start date. Today. The man they'd pulled over for a broken taillight. The man they'd surrounded with backup. The man whose credentials they'd refused to check. Their new boss. Get those cuffs off him, Holloway whispered, her voice hoarse. The click of the handcuffs opening sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Darius rolled his shoulders, straightened his suit jacket, and said nothing. He didn't have to. His silence was louder than any reprimand. Peterson stepped forward, face pale. Chief, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You didn't know, Darius repeated quietly. And if I hadn't been the chief, if I'd been someone without a title to protect me, would you have checked then? The question hung in the air, unanswered because everyone knew the answer. Darius picked up his briefcase on the hood of his car, opened it calmly, and pulled out his badge and credentials. The very items he'd been trying to show them 20 minutes ago. He held them up, let every officer see them clearly, then put them away. I need to get to headquarters, he said. I have a department to run, and apparently we have a lot of work to do. He walked to his car, started the engine, and drove away. Left behind were 6 officers who couldn't meet each other's eyes, a captain trying to calculate how much damage control she'd need to do, and cell phone videos that were already being deleted but would somehow still find their way to the media by evening. The whispers started again, different now. Not who is that guy, but what have we done? Peterson stood in the middle of the street long after everyone else had left, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Share this with someone who needs to understand why reform isn't just a buzzword. It's survival. By 4 o'clock, every news outlet in the state had the story. New police chief handcuffed by his own officers on first day was trending nationally. The pressure on Darius to respond was immense. Some wanted him to demand resignations. Others wanted assurances that this was an isolated incident, an unfortunate misunderstanding, nothing more. Darius walked to the podium in the city council chambers like a man who'd already decided which voices to ignore. The room was packed, reporters, city officials, community activists, and in the back row, Officer Dale Peterson, who'd been told he didn't have to attend but came anyway. Darius adjusted the microphone and looked directly into the cameras. "What happened to me today happens to people in this city every single day," he began, his voice calm but carrying weight. "The difference is I have a badge that will protect me tomorrow. They don't." The room went silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. No title, no position, no credential should ever be required to be treated with basic human dignity. But today proved that in our system, those things still matter more than they should. That's not just wrong, it's dangerous. He outlined reforms, mandatory bias training, community oversight boards, updated use of force policies, body camera accountability. But the real power was in what he said next. This isn't about punishing one officer who made a mistake. This is about transforming a culture that made that mistake predictable. He paused, looked directly at the camera. "To anyone watching this who has been pulled over and felt that same fear I felt today, I see you. I've been you. And I promise you, that change is starting now." In the back row, Peterson's eyes were wet. He'd expected anger, accusations, maybe even termination. Instead, he got something harder to bear. Grace paired with accountability. After the conference, Darius approached him privately. "I want you in the room when we build these reforms. You understand what needs to change better than anyone now." Peterson could barely speak. "Why would you trust me with that?" "Because," Darius said simply, "you're going to make sure it never happens again." 6 months later, Riverton looked different. Not physically. The streets were the same, the buildings unchanged, but the relationship between the police and the community had shifted in ways that felt almost impossible. Officer Peterson had become the department's most requested trainer for bias awareness courses. He taught new recruits using his own failure as a foundational case study, walking them through every decision point where he'd chosen assumption over inquiry. It was humbling work, painful work, essential work. "I thought I was good at my job," he told one academy class. "I thought experience made me sharp, but what I called instinct was often just bias dressed up in a uniform. The chief could have ended my career that day. Instead, he gave me the chance to help end that pattern for everyone else." The changes rippled beyond training. Monthly community forums now gave residents direct access to officers, not through official complaints, but through conversation. The promotion system had been overhauled to include community feedback alongside supervisor evaluations. Body cameras became non-negotiable. Some officers resisted. A few transferred to other departments. Others retired early rather than adapt. But the ones who stayed found something unexpected. The job got easier when the community trusted them. Darius kept his office door literally open during business hours. Any officer could walk in without an appointment, and many did, sometimes with questions, sometimes with concerns, sometimes just a talk. On his desk sat a single framed document, the incident report from his traffic stop, never filed officially but printed nonetheless. Visitors often asked why he kept it. "Because I never want to forget what it feels like to be on the other side of power," he'd say. "The moment I forget is the moment I stop being useful here." Peterson visited that office often. The two men had developed an unlikely partnership. The chief and the officer who'd handcuff him, working side by side to rebuild trust one policy, one conversation, one changed mind at a time. 1 year after that traffic stop, a documentary crew asked Darius if he regretted taking the job in Riverton. Given how it started, he thought for a long moment. "That traffic stop saved lives," he finally said. "Not because it happened. There's nothing redemptive about being handcuffed for a broken taillight. But because we refused to let it be meaningless. We turned pain into policy, humiliation into transformation. That's the only way these moments matter. Here's what Riverton taught us. Injustice will happen. Systems will fail. People will make mistakes rooted in bias they don't even recognize. But the real question isn't whether those moments occur, it's what we do after." Peterson learned he could carry assumptions or questions, but not both. The department learned that reform isn't about perfection. It's about accountability that leads to change. And the community learned their voices could reshape institutions that had ignored them for decades. Change doesn't require a perfect plan or a dramatic stage. Sometimes it just requires a quiet Tuesday morning, a broken taillight, and someone brave enough to transform pain into purpose. Here's my question for you. When have you been misunderstood? When have you misunderstood someone else? Both matter. Both deserve examination. Drop your story in the comments. And if this moved you, if it challenged you, subscribe to Earthly Tales. We're telling stories that don't just entertain. They push us to be better. Hit that bell, because next week's story, it'll shake you just as much. The intersection at 4th, an industrial looks like any other now. Cars pass through without incident. But for those who know its history, it's not just a street corner anymore. It's a turning point, a reminder that transformation is always possible if we're brave enough to choose it.